Welcome back to BH, everybody. I'm in Bangalore and Sashwath's in college. Anand's in Singapore, so we're all over the place. So we got online to have this conversation with you guys. Shashwat had recently written an article with Anand, which was featured in the Hindu, about the US dollar. So I thought we'll talk about that article today, which Shashwat had written. It was a very nice article. And then since it was published, I thought it would be interesting for all of us to talk about it and share it with you guys. So why don't you tell us what it's all about, Shashwat?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me back on. And also, regarding the article, so the article basically talks about the topic of de-dollarization, which is the idea that the US currency is going to be dethroned as the world reserve currency. The idea of a world reserve currency is basically the fact that the US dollar is used to settle most trade exchanges around the world. So China uses the US dollar, EU uses the US dollar, and even India uses the US dollar to settle currency trades. So the US dollar is seen as the sort of safe haven where you can always buy the dollar, and regardless of what implodes around the world, the dollar will be safe and sound. So there have been multiple occasions where supposed de-dollarization has come into the picture. So one was the biggest one before this sort of scenario was the 2008 crash, and that's when people really questioned whether the dollar was as stable as people thought it was. But the Fed stepped in and the U.S. Treasury stepped in and said, no, that we are going to protect the dollar and we are going to ensure that nothing happens. So the idea of the U.S. dollar is that whenever the Federal Reserve hikes rates, immediately you'll see a flow of capital back to the U.S. So you'll see everyone sending their capital. It's a flight to safety. So the US dollar is seen as the sort of the figure which can hold and with can withstand any storm per se. So in recent times, what has come about the topic of de-dollarization has come about because they're seeing the rise of China, and China is trying to, and for the past decade, China has been trying to increase its geopolitical dominance with the Belt and Road Initiative. So they've been loaning out money to countries which haven't been able to secure loans from Western countries. So they've been building up infrastructure projects in Africa. They've been building up infrastructure projects in Southeast Asian countries. So, and Sri Lanka as well is a big debtor to China. So, the idea is China is trying to expand its global influence. And secondly, the second reason which is cited for the de-dollarization is people are saying, look at the slide in the dollar value in the past 6 months. Against the euro, it is depreciated, and generally the dollar has depreciated in the past 6 months. But what people are failing to see is the fact that before the 6 month period, the dollar actually appreciated by an enormous amount against the euro, and it actually slid to parity to the euro. It was almost, it was more, and it actually became more valuable than the euro at some point. So it went from being less valuable than the euro to more valuable, and now it's sort of stabilized to around parity amount. So the idea is that, that is one topic. And the other topic is that there has been a financial so-called mini crisis with SVB, Silicon Valley Bank, and Signature Bank falling through. So people are saying, what, maybe the dollar and the US financial system is not the place to be. So with all of this and with the rise in trade settlements in renminbi, which is the Chinese currency, and so people are wondering whether the dollar's dominance is over. So the article concludes by saying it claims that, or rather, we make a claim that no, you can't have a proper challenger for the US dollar unless it's an open society. That is, investors have to be willing to trust that whatever happens, whatever implodes around the world, you can always come to this area, this liberal democracy, where my capital flow won't be controlled, where the processes for democracy is open and fair, and the idea that no matter who is in power, the system, there's a belief in the system. The system operates independently to a large extent of whoever is in power. Not a lot of countries, even India, which is claimed to be a contender to the US dollar, we don't really have that strong enough systems in place where we can say that regardless of who is in power, the systems will take care of the running the machine. That's not true for true for India, but it is to a large extent under Trump, under Biden, under Obama. For a large extent, it is true that U.S. systems have been strong enough to take care of the economy regardless of whoever was in power. So that's basically the summary of the article.
Cool. That's very true what your article says. So let me give a little bit of a context to what reserve currency. Why do we have this thing called a reserve currency? A lot of people do wonder, why do we need to have a reserve currency? You know, if all countries are trading with each other, we can just keep exchanging each other's currency. Why do we need a reserve currency? So we had to roll the clock back, way back, to see why we come to a reserve currency. Way
Yeah.
back before we had currencies, people needed to exchange goods. We cannot carry every single good. After the barter trade system, the world, humanity, when it was starting to build civilization, needed a ways and means of method of doing commerce without carrying all your goods across. So we needed some kind of medium, a material which we could all trust in, put our trust into. So you'll trust it, and I trust that material, and we can use that as an exchange. Instead of carrying our goods back and forth physically, we use this medium to, and it has to be something small at the same time, which cannot be replicated easily, cannot be forged. So all of us slowly came to agree on being gold. So gold was our first reserve currency of the world. Everyone was trading in gold, and everyone was using gold. And from gold, our global economy started developing. Our first few stock exchanges, our banks started coming around the world, and trading happened across the globe, especially in Europe, where most of our economic history, we have recorded histories from Europe. Of course, there's economic history across the globe everywhere. Even Native Americans were doing it, but there's no record of it. The advantage in the European history is it's all recorded, so we have some records to study economy. So there, gold was a reserve currency, and gold was used as a trading mechanism between empires, between the kings. And so, if someone wanted to lend money to the king, it was on gold. People borrowed against gold. Then, what happened was carrying so much of gold coins became a problem because of security and other reasons. So, we slowly moved on to giving currency papers, where the guy will say, I vouch for this person, he's left his gold for me over here. Please give him the same amount of gold over there. So, within families, banks became like that. So
Yeah.
those slowly started replacing gold, where the currency was backed by gold. That means any point in time you can walk to the bank and give the currency, and you can always get your gold back. The
Yeah.
guarantee was there, and that led to currencies. Slowly, people instead of carrying gold, they carried currencies around because the currency was pegged against gold. Then, of course, the 1970s came, the famous Richard Nixon, where he broke the chain between gold and the dollar. The reason why he did this, many reasons. The main reason is he wanted to inflate currency. He needed to finance a lot of things for the American government. So by breaking the shackles, he could print much currency as he needed.
Yeah.
That fundamentally changed our relationship with currency. That is where the problem for the dollar started. Because now what happened is all this time the currency is always pegged against this gold. Even the Indian rupee used to be a reserve currency for a long time. When we were under the British Empire, the Indian rupee was the main currency across the Indian Ocean, and that was the main trading hub of the world. So even we used to have be the rupee used to be a reserve currency. So going back when Nixon broke that link with the dollar, the American government took full control of the currency. That means they could print as much as they wanted, and they could manipulate it as much as they wanted. But people kept their faith in the dollar for a simple reason, like Shashwat said. The most important thing everyone wants is they want the currency to be transparent, and wherever the currency is from, it should be a place where law works.
Yeah.
Because if something happens, I can go to a court in the United States and I can present my case and say, this is where I've been cheated or this is where I've been wronged. And there's impartial application of law. Whereas there is no law is not colored by where I am from, what I'm doing. It is impartially applied. And that is the main strength of the dollar. The dollar is a currency which is transparent, and American law, legal system works over there. The
Yeah.
problem for any other currency, that's including India and China, is even if India claims to be a democratic and we are a pluralistic society, our laws are still not as robust as the American legal system. You can say, yes, in the US also they have issues, but their issues are not as bad as our issues. And we don't even need to talk about China. Chinese government can overnight decide to do whatever it wants. Even the Chinese
Yeah.
billionaires are in who are in China. don't want to keep their currency, money, their wealth in Chinese
Yes.
currencies
Yes.
because they want to keep it in dollars. Because the simple reason is the Chinese government can just lock up their accounts and say, no, you can't have access to your money anymore.
Yeah.
They can be unilateral in it. So even their own citizens don't want their currency. So when that is the situation, where are you going to invest in it? And then you
Right.
take Russia, for example. Russia, because of the way Putin is running the country, no one, their own citizens don't trust the country, currency because he can decide whatever he wants, like how he decided to invade Ukraine. It
Yeah.
made no economic sense. He may have had political sense, he may have had cultural sense, but economic sense is the main reason for a currency to be trusted on. And it made no economic sense walking into Ukraine. There was no economic upside to it. Then you take Brazil. Brazil, we know what's happening in Brazil as a country. It's not been
Yeah.
stable for a very long time. And how can you trust that currency? Their legal system and everything is an up and it's in a mess. And so, if you look at it all across the globe, unless you can have a currency which is transparent and laws can be applied upon it, and the system is robust, there's no currency. They, of course, said crypto is going to do it. But the problem with crypto is there's nothing there.
Yeah. There's nothing there.
Yeah, I mean, I recently did a video with Keshav about it, where I was trying to talk on a very basic level because Keshav doesn't understand what crypto is, and that's where the problem of crypto is. Because as far as the currency is concerned, it's very easy. I need to buy something. That's what the currency comes for. The only role of a
Yes.
currency is at a level of someone like Keshav or me is if I need a service, I need a product, I use that currency to buy it. It's as simple as that. And crypto
Yeah.
fails in that basic thing. If I cannot take crypto and go to the grocery store and buy a few groceries,
Yeah.
it's impossible. Forget all the evaluation of crypto going up and down, whatever. Forget the basic role of a currency is to be able to transfer, is to exchange. I'm not able to do that with crypto.
Yeah.
So forget it may evolve, it may develop. I don't know. I don't see any future in it. I may be wrong. I may be old school. Maybe it changes. I don't know. But as of right now, I don't see any other replacement to the US dollar.
Yeah.
So this is a problem. Yes, I can understand. A lot of people feel frustrated with the dollar. They feel frustrated with the way American Fed works, or they have some issues, cultural issues or political issues with America. But unfortunately, if you want to do global trade, you have no other
Yeah.
choice.
Yes.
And when you say when the Fed raises interest rate and there's a flight to capital and everybody goes back to US, that's nothing but the sense that everyone's taken the currency because it's cheap in the US because they're giving it at a low interest rate. They've taken it and invested it worldwide. So when the
Yeah.
Fed raises the rates, people are not sure where the currencies are going to settle, where the balance will settle. So they pull
Yeah.
it all back to US. They wait for the dust to settle down. And once the dust starts settling down, again the global trade comes again. Again the US dollars will flood into the global market.
Yes.
And that's happening already in India. I mean, if you see the stock market in India, been going nowhere for the last couple of years because simple reason the FIIs have been pulling the money out. The domestic investors have been investing, institutional investors have been propping the market up, but
Yeah.
they can't do it for eternity. It can't go on forever. It's not sustainable.
Yeah.
That's why it will finally correct. The Indian stock market will correct because there's no other way where for it to go.
Yeah.
So I don't see any other currency, like you said, Shashwat, which can replace the dollar. And
Right.
I understand the arguments we always hear from the comments when we speak about it. What about BRICS? What about creating another currency?
The
Russia,
thing with
China.
BRICS. Yeah.
Yeah,
No. The thing with
correct.
Yeah, the thing with BRICS is that it's nothing concrete. It's just a communication channel for these countries to come and loosely talk and shake hands in front
You
of
know
your
what
camera.
it's like? I'll tell you what it's like. It's like office water cooler discussions. All of us
Yeah, exactly.
don't. All of us are. America's a manager. We're all the
Yeah,
underlings of the manager in an
yeah,
office, and we just kind of walk around the water cooler and we basically whine about the boss, saying, "You know what he did
yeah.
to me? You know what he did to me?" But we don't want to help each other because
Right.
by chance the boss the boss wants some help from me. I'd rather
Yeah,
dump these guys and go shake hands with him. I
right.
might get a promotion. So that
Yeah,
you see it in Brazil, you see it in India, you see it in China, and you see it even in Russia. Over the past 20 odd years, anytime US was being nice to Brazil, Brazil will immediately dump all of us and make unilateral decisions for its own interest with US.
The US, yeah,
If US is being nice to India, India will dump everybody and make friends with US because it was nice to make friends with US because it's the US dollar. The same thing
yeah,
is true with Russia. When the Soviet Union fell apart and everything happened to the Russian economy, Russia and America were very close friends at the time. They were doing a lot of bilateral things were happening. A lot of Russian businesses were setting up in US and US was doing in Russia. Things fell apart after Putin came and things just turned sour. Even with
yeah,
China, even before the current president came, things with China and US were pretty good.
yeah. The
So at
promises
that
of
time,
China even liberal. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and so this BRICS thing is a very loose thing where these guys just get around and they really don't do anything. They
yeah,
just kind of like whine and whinge, and they meet now and then, they shake hands, but
yeah.
nothing concrete
Exactly.
comes out of it.
I had a research project for one of my courses on macroeconomics on the BRICS, and I was going through the material trying to find some sort of legitimate literature talking about what trade benefits have come out of the BRICS pact, but nothing has come out of it. It's just people coming and yeah, and they've set up a bank which is now loaning out money, but then that's not really benefiting trade or it's not a large scale thing. I mean, that's okay, it's great, but then there's been no bilateral trade agreements because of
And
BRICS, which has come about at a large scale.
correct. And if China really wants to give US a run for the money when it comes to dollars, they have to open up their currency. This
Yes.
is one of the most tightly controlled and close-fisted currency in the world is the Chinese
Yeah.
currency. And people think just because they're going around giving money to a lot of African countries and Asian countries, giving them cheap loans, the China is like wielding some influence. Yeah, in the short term, yes, but nobody is going to sell their soul. Like what happened
Yeah.
in Sri Lanka? Chinese lent them a lot of money. Then they had a huge economic upheaval, and things have turned very sour in Sri Lanka. But they didn't go to China and say, "Here, take my country. We want to become a mini colony of China." Like how you guys want Taiwan take us to adopt us. No
Yeah.
one ever
Yeah.
walks up to China and say, "Adopt us." They'll immediately
Yeah.
stop paying the loan and they'll say, "IMF, America, somebody come and bail us
Yeah.
out." They'll never go back to
Exactly.
China and say, continue giving us free cash. It doesn't happen.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing, right? And one more important point was that as soon as the US or any other Western country is willing to lend to any of these countries, they're more than happy to dump China and say bye bye to them and say, please give me
Correct.
dollars.
Correct. And the reason why China has had any influence is because America, for the last, I would say, since Obama left, since his last term, has been retreating from the global stage.
Yeah.
Because it's been slowly retreating and it's focused on its own issues internally, they're going through their own things internally. There's a lot of empty space on the world stage, and China is trying to busily take up some light.
Yeah.
But all that's going to take is for the US to take a U turn and suddenly start engaging with the world, and everybody would rather be with the US. It's like
Yeah.
famously Indian cars. If before all the foreign cars came into India, all of us used to drive around the Fiat and the Ambassadors, and
Right.
who wants to go buy a Fiat and an Ambassador now? So
Yeah.
much so
Once
the
it
companies
opened
have
up. Yeah.
disappeared. Yeah, because that's
Yes.
the same thing true with once a country like America comes to the global stage, you're given freedom, you're given innovation, you're given
Yeah.
access, and the most important thing is you have a voice. You
Yeah.
may not have a loud voice. Agreed. There's racism, there is sexism, there's all kinds of isms happening. But in the China, there is nothing. You have no voice. There's not even a
Yeah.
whisper. You can't go
Right.
do anything in China. So there's no comparison here.
And the thing with China, which the US, which they are, the thing with China is what propelled them to dominance is the fact that they have a trade surplus. They have a trade surplus with almost every country they trade with. And, they have all this excess cash and they're trying to figure out places to plug in the cash. But the idea is that their labor dividends, because of their destructive one-child policy, has gone so far south that, they're losing
It's over.
population now. And
Yeah,
what
that's
they're
over.
trying to do is they're trying to even deflate the, I mean, sorry, they're trying to depreciate their currency so much so that their exports remain cheap because
Yeah,
they're trying to artificially account for the fact that their labor isn't as cheap anymore because they're
it's not
losing
sustainable.
population.
It's not
Yeah.
sustainable.
So
And you
after a
can start.
point, yeah, sorry,
No,
yeah,
no.
go on. Yeah.
Can no. After a point.
No, no,
Sorry.
I was just saying that after a point, there's only so much you can depreciate your currency for, after which it collapses and your currency has to strengthen and come back to equilibrium.
Correct. And you see this throughout history. It's not one empire, not one civilization. Nobody has escaped the laws of economy. What keeps your empire going? What keeps you sustaining, your civilization sustaining, your society sustaining? Is it the economy? And
Yeah.
economy is nothing but access, that you have access to the things you want. All of us have desires and all of us have wants. And we always gravitate towards places and do things that give us access. Everything we
Yes.
do in life, what we tell our children, is all about enabling us to satisfy those wants and to gain
Correct.
access. The reason why we have education, the reason why we want to go to Europe or Germany or US and settle down is to have access, be it medical, be it whatever. We want access. And China does not seem to be offering that right now. If
Yeah.
anything, Chinese society is retreating, is going further back and becoming more authoritarian, like how it used to be under Chairman Mao, and they're losing
Right.
more and more freedom. And even the slightest voices of dissent within the Chinese Communist Party, any even a whisper of something different, it's squashed.
Yeah.
There's no. It's becoming more and more like North Korea. And now, if you remove China, or the thing saying, okay, let's forget China, let's talk about anybody else. Who else is there?
No one
And
as of now.
yeah, and I'm sure a lot of Indians who are watching this will say, oh, what about India? Yeah,
Yeah.
India can, but we have a long way to go.
Right. I
We
mean,
have a very,
we were there around, I mean, I'd say 2008, 2009, when we had a growth rate of about 10, 12%. We were sort of getting there with our judiciary being independent from politics, and you have a sort of system. We were building a system which was running independently. But now
correct.
you've sort of taken it all back and said, let's tie in that one man and then make everything an arm of him. Now that's where we've lost the plot.
Yeah, and I don't want to get political. It's fair
Yeah.
enough. We are a democracy, and whatever representation we have in the center stage in India, it is because it's the voice of the people. So that's fair
Yes.
enough. I agree with that. Our elections are by far are very fair and very transparent. We may not like whatever is happening, but one thing we should be all proud of as Indians is our democracy is
It was very
functioning.
fair. Yeah.
Yeah, it is very fair. Whomever the people by majority want gets elected in our country, and the true
Correct.
opposition in this country is the population of India. We decide what happens if the government works for us or not. We decide by going to the voting booth and voting. But that said, the problem is we have such a weird K-shaped recovery happening in this country
Yeah.
post the demonetization. Forget if it was a good or a bad idea. Forget that. From that shock, we have been having successive problems, and the pandemic did not help. So
Yes.
the split which has happened is so deep in our society right now, where, for example, this area in Bangalore where I am at in Whitefield, the rents are soaring. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable the way the rents are soaring while the economy is so depressed, because it shows you the deep division in our society. The few IT jobs and the few IT companies which are recruiting and hiring, and because it's in such a localized area, you're seeing such an inflation in real estate
Particular
prices.
area. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you step outside, you go 30 kilometers outside that area, you travel
Rent is
45
dirt cheap.
kilometers, yeah, it just collapses.
Yeah.
There's so much of available of property and rent, everything, and it's a huge disparity. People might say, no, you don't see it, you don't see it. All you have to do is go do the rental market, do a dipstick. If you think you're in a place which is very cheap, go to an area which is very expensive and ask them for the same kind of location, rent. You'll
Yeah.
see there's such a disparity and there's such a shortage in those areas. There's such a huge demand. Then you come to
Yes.
these other areas, there's so much of oversupply.
Yeah.
And this applies across the board. If you take any big metropolitan cities in our states, those metropolitan cities are the hubs where all the
Yes.
economic activity and the money is focused in. The rest of the state is suffering,
Yeah.
and that division is not like 60-40. That division in India is like 15 to 85, you
Yes.
know and that 15% is inside the cities, and we are like on the K shape. And out of that 15, you have another 10% out of that 15 which is even doing even better, thanks to
Exactly.
the situation the globe is in. Like we've said in one of our videos, we only have huge hammers to deal with our problems.
Yeah.
The government cannot take a surgical
Yes.
knife and fix these economic issues. So
Yes.
that 10% is even soaring even higher. Like, Mukesh Ambani gifting his longtime friend 1,500 crore property.
Yeah.
Imagine the hubris of it. I mean, the guy is so wealthy. He tells his longtime buddy, "Hey, dude, here, take 1,500 crore building. It's yours. Enjoy it."
Yeah.
And not only is he giving it, he's making sure it gets publicity.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it's
That's really
I'm sure
rubbing it
Warren
in
Buffett.
the.
Yeah, yeah, it's just like rubbing, taking the guy's face and like rubbing it on the face. Rest of the Indians are like, what? There's no need to obscenely show it.
Yeah, you can make it a private transaction.
Yeah, it could have been something totally under the radar. Like lots of people do. I'm sure like the Tatas do a lot of help within their families. They're giving lots of things that favors are happening, but you
But
never
they're
hear about
careful to
it.
be. Yeah.
Yeah. Why do you need to like go down Tom Tom, go tell everybody, hey, here's my chatty buddy, I'm giving it because that's where the Indian currency will never become reserve because you're like wondering left, like, how is this fair?
Yeah.
And that's the same issue that everyone has with the dollar. They're saying if Americans can bail out their banks by just printing dollars, how is that fair? But how is anything else fair? Who's
Yeah.
fairer than that? I mean, so the
But
dollar,
that's
because
the
one,
thing. That's partly why this reserve currency status is so coveted because they're able to debase their currency. That is, they're able to print as much as they want and still not suffer too much because their currency is the currency which everyone uses, and it's
correct,
that you can always cushion whatever debasement you have. You always have
correct.
a sort of underlying padding.
Correct. And you see this true in Indian, what do you call, in Indian stock markets. You got these few big Indian families which are running the Indian industries. They
Yes.
control like that. You know, we don't want to mention names, but we know the names. Everybody knows them. They
Yeah.
control majority of the Indian industries, and they can leverage their owning shareholdings of their company to whatever level they want and borrow as much of them because they for them for a company printing currencies like making share printing share documents is them printing
It's like
currency.
minting currency, correct?
Yeah, so whenever they need currency, the guy on the top decides I need some more money to buy a new toy for myself, I'll just
Yeah.
issue some more shares, and the Indian public have no choice but to soak it up.
Yeah, because it's part of the like even a lot of these companies which I'm mentioning are part of the index. So as soon as
Correct,
he issues most like your passive funds, all your LIC passive funds are going into these indices which are which comprise of your big families which do
correct.
have multiple companies listed on the index.
Yes, and they print currency, and
Yeah,
there's no transparency. I mean, there's no real democracy in it. It's just
yeah,
these 200 and 250 families which control everything. There is
yes,
no
and that
way.
that happens to be one of the big flaws with passive investing, which is that you sort of are forced to buy into these companies regardless of whatever the valuation is. So
Correct.
you're
Which
not
is
given much of an option. Yeah,
correct. That is why it's better as a retail investor to do your due diligence and
yeah,
study and pick on your own. But the problem is, majority of the people either they don't want to do it or
or
they
don't
just
have
don't
the
have the
time to
time
do
to
it.
do it. Yeah, they don't have the time.
Yes,
If I'm going from hand to mouth,
yeah.
my job situation is such, where do I have the time to sit and do research and find
I
out
think
and keep a track of these companies?
in the intelligent investor, he talks about the young surgeon, right, who has no time to
Yes.
look at stock numbers because you're from day to night, you're wherever you're working, and by the time you come back, you get maybe 2 3 hours of sleep, and then you have to get back to the grind.
Correct. And you can't be bothered and stressed about this. You have enough on your plate. So your
Exactly.
passive index seems to be the only option that you have. It's better than
Yeah.
no option.
It's sort of like the
From
music's playing, and you all know that you're playing musical chairs, but you don't know when
correct
the
and
music will end up stopping.
correct. And this happened in India 100 years ago, where you had these zamindars who own all the best, cultible lands were all owned by these zamindars, and
Yeah,
they'd have 1,000 acres, 2,000 acres, and finally society crumbled, and they had to break these guys up and remove all of them and redistribute the wealth.
right,
All the wealth was locked into real estate like this. Then the finally independence happened, and the government had to strong arm, and society went through a big churning, and it all got dissolved, and everyone got a piece of the pie. And now we have reached the same thing. That kind of monopoly is happening in our industries, where our
right,
industries are not controlled by the Indian people anymore. They're controlled by a few bunch of families, and we're all being held pretty much like we're all sitting there like wondering what to do.
right.
This kind of went a little tangent. We went on talking about reserve
Yeah.
currency. So I don't see any other option other than the dollar right now, until and unless we find some other country which is going to do this. What America is willing to
I
do,
mean, if
I don't
China
know.
were to, let's say, tomorrow say that, we're dissolving the Communist Party and we're going to let the people vote, and we have a judiciary
Yeah,
system and we're going to have open society with no capital controls, then maybe. But,
maybe.
that's a
I
dream.
don't. I
That's
don't
a
see it
pipe dream.
happening in my lifetime. I
Yeah.
don't see it happening in my lifetime. Maybe in yours, I don't know. But you
But
got to
again,
realize
the phrase
something.
goes,
Yeah, but
stranger
we
things
have
have
to keep some.
happened.
But one thing must keep in mind is that even the Americans won't allow it to happen. That yes, the Chinese
Uh,
don't. I mean, the Americans don't like communism, but at the same time, they don't want everybody to be like them. Because
yeah.
if everybody else is like them, what makes them
Then what's
special?
the point of? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, why are you going to go to US if you can do it here in India or you can do it in
Yeah,
China? What's your attraction? If you can
right.
achieve your dreams here, and we're such a free society, that's why if you notice, their foreign policy is always like this.
Yeah,
They want you to be a free society, but
yeah,
not too free. They want
yeah,
them to be the freest society. Don't you be free, but not free as me.
yeah,
They tell the Europeans that too. You guys are
yeah,
okay. You guys, but keep fighting amongst yourselves, okay?
uh,
Don't get along too much.
yeah,
We don't want you guys to compete with us.
right. Yeah,
So anyway, that's an interesting conversation. That was a lovely article you and Anand had written, Shashwa. So thanks for writing that article
yeah.
and
Thank
sharing it
you.
with
Yeah,
us today. And till we see you again in Be Rich, hopefully soon. And
yeah.
best of luck in all your endeavors there in college.
Thank
And
you.
thanks for
Yeah,
tuning in today.
yeah.
Thanks everyone. Thanks for joining us today at Be Rich. And please do subscribe to our channel and do share our content with your friends and people you think who might enjoy our content. Do turn on the bell notifications so you get notified when we put out new content. And see you again soon.
It's a great privilege and honor that so many of you in thousands have subscribed to my channel and have supported me. I have written 2 books in English, The Alchemy of Money and Ordinary Stocks, Extraordinary Profits. These books are published by us and are ready. If you want to procure a copy, send us a message to the WhatsApp number given below and my team would respond to you. If you want an Amazon Kindle copy, you can click the link below. Finally, those who wish to consult with me can send a mail to berichenglish@gmail.com. Once again, I thank you for your support. If you like this video, press the subscribe button of my channel, hit the like button and turn on the bell notification.